It's April 5th, 2024, and today, well, I'm pet sitting, so you can look at these nerds here. That's Bandit. That's Lucy. They're nerds. And today we're going to talk about Martha Wells's racism. Because if you've only read the Murderbot Diaries, some of this may come as a surprise, or maybe it won't, depending on, if you're actually paying attention. Because the Murderbot Diaries is a story that is about escaping from slavery. And it's about specifically a robot. Bless you. A robot who is escaping from slavery. Look at that face. You're going to be on TV. So, Murderbot, the protagonist, is an android, a robot designed to look like a human being. It's made out of both organic and mechanical material. It's an android. And if you were, small grammar lesson. Android means specifically a robot designed to look like a man. Andro, A-N-D-R-O, means man or male. Oid, O-I-D, means like similar in appearance. I had other examples to compare it to, but anything like humanoid, humanoid means human like in appearance. Android means like a man in appearance. The female equivalent for android is gynoid, which is where the G-Y-N in misogyny comes from. It's also where gynecologist, all that kind of thing. Women-like in appearance for gynoid. Since Murderbot is not designed to look like a man or a woman, and it is non-binary, it is an anthroid. A-N-T-H-R-O-I-D. As in literally just anthro, as in human. It is human-like in appearance, but it is not a human. It is a robot. And yes, I'm using the word robot purposefully. Murderbot is not a bot, but it is a robot. Anthroids, androids, gynoids, they're all robots. Murderbot is not a cyborg. A cyborg, and yes, we are just going to go off on this tangent. A cyborg is a cybernetic organism. Cyborg. Cybernetic organism. If you've seen Star Trek, this is where the Borg get their name. It's literally just cyborg, but just the second half, so it's just Borg. They're cyborgs. A cyborg is an organic organism. It's something that starts out purely organic and is then added onto with cybernetics to create a cyborg. Like if we took Bandit here, we gotta bark at a car. Bandit here would become a cyborg if he lost a leg and we gave him a robotic leg instead. Alright, they're leaving. A cyborg is something that starts out organic and is then later augmented with cybernetics. So anytime the Murderbot Diaries is referring to augmented humans, those people are cyborgs because they are organisms that have been augmented with cybernetics. Just because Martha Wells has decided to make up a bunch of new words to confuse everybody for no reason doesn't change the fact, because Martha Wells also has a serious problem with ableism, and the treatment of augmented humans, aka cyborgs in the Murderbot Diaries, is going to have to get its own video at some point. But this video, we're going to be talking about Martha Wells' racism, because it's a long-standing thing. If you've read the Murderbot Diaries and you have any shred of media critical thinking skills, media literacy, any kind of understanding of what you're reading, you may have noticed that the Murderbot Diaries isn't as actually anti-slavery as it would seem at first glance. If you have no clue what reading and critical thinking skills are. Because Murderbot was a slave, and then it stopped being enslaved and doesn't really seem to give a shit about any other enslaved people. And like, even just starting all the way back in book 1, other enslaved people, other enslaved androids. Hi. She wants to say hi to the camera. You just can't come up on the chair. Hi. You don't need to bite. You're gonna distract me. Murderbot is a former slave. It has escaped. Hi. She wants attention. And it doesn't seem to give a single shit about any other enslaved people, and neither does anybody else in this entire fucking series so far. It's... Alright, you gotta get off the... Can't go up on the chair. You can sit up here. You already got it dirty. Sit up here. Yeah. Lay down. Can you hear her snapping her jaws? Why are you sticking my hand in your mouth? Why? That's not needed. Get her, Bandit. You're gonna ruin the video, puppy. What was I saying? Oh, yeah. The fact that Murderbot and nobody else in this whole entire series gives a shit about any other enslaved people. And yes, people, constructs are people, and yes, they are fucking enslaved. And they all deserve freedom just as much as the protagonist Murderbot does, but nobody else seems to fucking think that. And this is where one of the problems starts. This is not the only fucking problem, but it's one of the main and most fucking noticeable ones, because it is telling us a story that slavery is only a bad thing if it's happening to the protagonist. No other slaves should be freed. They should just be mercilessly fucking murdered. Even all the way back in book 1. Murderbot and even Mensa just goes around killing the other sec units instead of doing anything to disable them so that they can't keep fighting, to figure out how to fucking rescue them because they're literally enslaved and they have no fucking choice in anything that they are doing. So instead of doing anything to figure out how to hack their governor modules and help them, they just die. Mensa fucking kills one, I'm pretty sure. Murderbot kills a bunch of them. And like, it would have been fine for Murderbot to still be traumatized and brainwashed in the very first story and be too traumatized to think it has a chance of rescuing anybody else. But what the fuck about the Preservation Ops team, They've learned that Murderbot is a person, that Murderbot has feelings and deserves freedom. So why don't we fucking extend this to literally any other construct, Are we just supposed to pretend these constructs are fucking evil because they have no choice but to follow orders? Because that's exactly what fucking happens. That is That's literally what happens. We just treat all of the other constructs who are literally enslaved people who are just as fucking sentient as Murderbot itself. They can be just as sarcastic and sad and anxious as Murderbot, but they're just treated like fucking objects that exist to be destroyed because they're in the fucking way, and nobody cares about rescuing them. And this is just book 1. It's okay. This is just book 1. And it could have worked if this stopped at book 1. And by the time book 2 was over, Murderbot has had his mind changed and realized, oh shit, these are other people and they do deserve freedom just like me, and I don't need to be terrified of them just like the fucking humans' propaganda for keeping them enslaved wants it to be. Nope. We just keep being told that other constructs should not be freed. And Martha Wells has gone out of her way to make it very fucking clear in book 2 and hasn't fucking done anything to change it now all the way in book 7 that fucking she sees the idea of robots having a slave uprising. She's made it very clear that robot rebellions and slave uprisings from robots is just a cringy cliche that's stupid and shouldn't happen. Like, if you don't believe me, just go fucking reread book 2. Go reread Artificial Condition. The idea that slaves have the right to rebel, including with violence, is treated as ridiculous and stupid and a ridiculous cliche. That's called slavery apologism, people. So, first we have Murderbot, the only construct who is enslaved, who deserves freedom, because it's the protagonist. No other constructs deserve to be freed, and we keep being told that they shouldn't have freedom because, well, they're just too dangerous and they'd want to kill everybody. You can't stop oppressing people because then they'll want revenge on the people who enslaved them, so you better just keep them all enslaved because they're just too dangerous to free. We keep getting told this over and over and over again, and there's nothing being done to fucking prove it wrong. Watch out. You can go out. Go on. Go on. So what was I saying before these dogs distracted me? Thanks, guys. Yeah. Martha Wells is treating the thought that robots who are explicitly enslaved should rebel, and she's treating this like a cringy, embarrassing cliche. And literally says that they shouldn't be freed because then they'll want to kill all the humans, and then the humans wouldn't be able to make more TV shows. So, yeah. It's literally saying that TV shows, new TV shows coming out, is more important and a higher priority than not keeping people enslaved. And this is just from book 2. And we are all the way out to book 7 now. Technically story 9 because they're just 2 short stories. But we are at book 7 now, System Collapse. And it's not really major spoilers, but I mean, it is going to be spoilers, so if you don't want to know anything about System Collapse, then stop watching now. Yeah, if you don't want spoilers for System Collapse, go away, read the book, come back to whatever timestamp this is. So in Systems Collapse, the newest book that came out in like November 2023 or something, we have a plot that on a fundamental level does not fucking understand how slavery works. Because the whole plot is that the colonists on this planet are, the whole plot is that they have to agree to be enslaved by this company, Barish Estranza, before they can be enslaved. And the only thing they have to do to prevent this from happening is say, no, we don't want to be enslaved. Like, that's the major plot. That these people have to be convinced to not agree to be enslaved. And then they do. So then they're not enslaved. And this video is just going to be completely out of order because I'm autistic and I have ADHD and I don't care. And I'm assuming you do too if you're watching this. And if you don't, well, enjoy the ride. So this plot for the 7th book fundamentally does not understand how slavery and oppression work, because the entire premise is that you have to agree to be enslaved before it can happen. And I don't know how to explain to you people, but that's literally not how this fucking works. And it also acts like just not wanting to be enslaved means that it won't happen. And it doesn't make any fucking sense. Even if we, like, it doesn't fucking work. That's not how this fucking works. There is no reason that the bearish Estranza people would be wasting time trying to get these people permission to enslave them. Because first of all, that's literally not how slavery works. That's not how any fucking oppression works. If this was actually trying to be a serious story about slavery, then they would have literally come in and just fucking kidnapped them all by force, because that's how it actually fucking works. Even if you're trying to do it as a metaphor for capitalism and people agreeing to take bad jobs, that's still not how this fucking works. Because capitalism is inherently forcing people to take those jobs. You don't actually have a choice between taking a minimum wage job where half your fucking paycheck goes just to feeding you and rent, and it's lucky if it's only half. That's literally forcing you to do that. This is literally just people showing up and say, hey, come fucking be our slaves. And it doesn't fucking work. And this is just one of the very many problems with this series and with Martha Wells' writing entirely. Because like I said, all the way back in book 2 and even book 1, we are told very clearly that slave rebellions are cringy and embarrassing cliches that shouldn't be written about because they're boring and stupid and ridiculous. Do I need to explain to you that that's not actually anti-slavery or pro-liberation in any way? And then, yeah. Also in book 7, the newest one, we have some constructs who are enslaved, who are being forced to attack the protagonists. And you know what happens to one of these people? These enslaved people who have literally no choice but to follow orders? Guess what? Go ahead and guess. I bet you already know, because I'm assuming you've already read System Collapse if you're watching this. One of them, just completely written as an afterthought, gets literally torn to fucking pieces while they're still alive by ART. And this is written as an afterthought, and we're supposed to think it's really badass and cool and shows how awesome and good at fighting ART is. And it's framed as just, oh yeah, the protagonists are cool as always, instead of the most gruesome and horrific fucking thing to ever happen in this entire fucking series. A construct we all know very fucking well from Murderbot are literal fucking people who feel as much pain and fear and everything else as everyone else in existence. They literally got torn to pieces, while alive, by a protagonist. And we're supposed to think it's cool. We're not supposed to be absolutely fucking horrified by this. We're not supposed to think it's a fucking horrible tragedy. It's just treated as an afterthought that should be taken to say that ART is completely badass and cool. Instead of, wow, I cannot fucking believe that ART literally just fucking tortured a slave to death by ripping them to literal fucking shreds while they are still alive. So, it's not even speculation, it's just fact. If Murderbot had a story about being torn to literal pieces while it was still working for the company, it would be very obviously treated as completely traumatic and horrible and something that shouldn't happen to anyone, because Murderbot is the protagonist. But this other fucking enslaved construct, they're not a protagonist. We don't even get to know their fucking name. And it's fine for them to literally be torn to pieces while they're alive by a fucking protagonist, and we're supposed to have no problem with this. We're not supposed to be thinking, oh, art is fucking terrifying, what in the absolute hell? Because here's a very simple fact for you people. If you have the ability to literally tear someone apart, limb from fucking limb, while they are alive, you have the ability to fucking knock them unconscious without fucking killing them and without doing any more harm than is necessary, especially when we are talking about someone like ART, who is the most fucking advanced supercomputer robot in this entire fucking series. You cannot convince me with all the other shit that ART can do that it's just somehow incapable of hacking governor modules to disable them. It literally threatened to fry Murderbot's whole entire fucking brain in book 2, and we all know it could have fucking carried that threat out without any hesitation. So, you cannot expect me to believe that it had no choice but to rip this fucking living, enslaved person who had no choice but to attack any of them. You cannot convince me that it was actual, real self-defense for ART to rip this person to pieces while they are literally fucking alive and in pain. Self-defense does not include literally torturing someone to death and ripping them to fucking pieces. If anyone did that to Murderbot, or even an ART drone that doesn't even feel pain, it would be treated as horrible and horrific and traumatic and catastrophic. But it's perfectly fucking fine for ART to do it. A literal fucking protagonist. It's fine for them to do this to a fucking enslaved person, because in this series, slavery is only bad if it happens to the protagonist. Like, literally. What other takeaway am I supposed to have when, all the way back in book 1, other enslaved constructs are just constantly being fucking murdered without any attempt at rescuing them at all? Oh, and let's talk about book 5. Well, it's book 6, Network Effect. In book 6, we learn about some also brainwashed and enslaved humans who have no choice but to obey the orders they were given. And this is also a thing with the whole Martha Wells is extremely fucking ableist thing. These people have been brainwashed using a bunch of sci-fi futuristic drugs so that they have no choice but to obey the order to assassinate someone. They can't feel pain because Martha Wells is ableist and couldn't be bothered to do 5 seconds of research about the real fucking people who have the disability that means you can't feel pain, and just decided to use this shitty, ableist, meaningless trope that was stupid and completely useless 20 fucking years ago at this point. And these people, yeah, they're literally slaves, very blatantly. They are just as much slaves as Murderbot was. They're just as much slaves as anybody else in this whole fucking series. But they're not treated like people. We are explicitly told that they are not people, and that there is no point trying to fucking help them in any way, because they are, and I quote, less sentient than a Hollerbot. Because even though this series is supposed to be about how robots are also people, it doesn't actually fucking think that. Because here we are literally comparing an enslaved person to another enslaved person and saying that the enslaved human is less sentient than a Hollerbot. AKA, slavery is only a problem in the Murderbot Diaries if it is happening to a protagonist. It's bad if Murderbot gets repeatedly stabbed and attacked and is forced to obey orders, but it's not a problem and not something that anybody needs to care about when it happens to someone else. We shouldn't be trying to help these people, shouldn't be trying to rescue them. No. That's ridiculous. Because they're not the protagonists, so why the fuck should we care? They're not even people. And, like, it would be literally fine if it was just Murderbot who had these fucked up ideas because it is traumatized, but literally every single other fucking person in this entire series just goes along with it. Because it's not actually just what Murderbot thinks, it's what the entire fucking series is hinging on. The people of preservation are supposed to have morals. They're supposed to care about people. They're supposed to care about things that even Murderbot doesn't care about. But even these people don't even do anything to try and fucking help anyone. Like the people who were fucking brainwashed. They just ask, oh, should we try helping? And then Murderbot says no, and they're just like, oh, okay, then we'll just fucking kill him. It'll be fine. No follow-up questions. No, okay, well, we will bring them to the infirmary and try anyways because, you know, people are worth something and should be fucking rescued. So, yeah, that whole thing got revealed in book 5, and it's also extremely fucking ableist and demonizing real fucking disabled people. But again, we are 7 books into this fucking series now, and we have 0 signs of any actual steps being taken in any way to enact real fucking liberation for the slaves in this fucking setting. Murderbot does not actually have any fucking plans to try and rescue anyone. It frees exactly 1 person in book 2, and then never again. Like, literally. And this is not, and nobody else is trying to either, except for 1 fucking person, which is MB 2.0, which I'm not trying to give any other spoilers, but you can figure that the fuck out if you read the book. But, yeah. And this is not just about just the Murderbot Diaries, because Martha Wells has written more than 1 book. She's been writing for decades. And if you've read her books of the Raksura, they're also just as fucking terrible when it comes to the handling and framing of slavery, because she literally has one of a whole class of Raksurian society, and they are literal fucking slaves. But they're the happy slaves trope. You know, like fucking J.K. Rowling did with the house elves. They're very blatantly slaves, but it's not slavery because they're happy to do it. Because they're just driven by their biology to just inherently be good at child rearing and cooking and cleaning and making everybody's clothes and hunting for everybody's food and preparing that food, literally raising everybody's fucking children. You know, where have we heard these fucking justifications for slavery and fucking systemic oppression before? Gee, I just can't figure that out. Maybe you can figure that out if you think about it for 5 seconds. So, to be fucking clear, when J.K. Rowling says that the house elves aren't slaves because they enjoy being enslaved, that's called slavery apologism, and that is blatantly fucking racist. And when Martha Wells does that exact same fucking thing, it is also blatant slavery apologism and just as fucking racist as when J.K. Rowling does it. Especially because Martha Wells literally has a villain come in like the last book, or the second to last book of the Raksura, to explicitly say that these people are enslaved, to show that that's a ridiculous statement. Because when you have a villain say something like that, the whole entire purpose is that they're a villain, so they don't have any clue what they're talking about. So of course, a villain saying that the Arbora are slaves is something you should laugh at. Because, well, they just don't understand Raksuran society, and that the Arbora love doing literally every single fucking thing of any kind of labor around the colony at all. So, yeah, this is not just limited to the Murderbot Diaries. Martha Wells has a fucking history of writing shit that is just justifying slavery. And yes, that does in fact explicitly include the Arbora, whether Martha Wells insists they enjoy it or not. The happy slave trope is literally a real fucking stereotype created to justify the continuation of slavery in North America and elsewhere on this fucking real world we live in. Are you just gonna stand there? What you doing? You can come back out here. So yeah, Martha Wells does not know how to fucking write slavery and handle it appropriately. Because first of all, she thinks that saying that people are happy with being enslaved means that they're not actually enslaved, as though that's not a real fucking stereotype created to justify real world slavery, and as though that's not the exact same shit that misogynists say to justify oppressing women and keeping women in the kitchen where they belong. Like, it doesn't fucking make any sense, because Martha Wells on the outside seems like she's trying to be a feminist because she loves writing matriarchal societies where men are oppressed, but then she'll just fucking use the exact same misogynistic stereotypes that are used to oppress women and say women shouldn't have jobs, they should just stay home and cook and clean and take care of the kids because women are just inherently more nurturing and enjoy housework more than men do. Like, even if we ignore the fact that it's literal slavery apologism, which it is, and you can't ignore that fact, but if we just set that aside for 5 seconds and just look at it from a feminist perspective, it's literally blatant misogyny. And, like, it doesn't fucking make any sense. So, yeah, it's not just the Murderbot Diaries. Martha Wells has been doing this for decades. And there are so many fucking problems with the Murderbot Diaries. What have I said? I've said, yes, constructs who are not the protagonist are constantly casually fucking murdered, including being tortured to death by protagonists, and we're not supposed to think about it twice, because they're not actually supposed to be treated like real fucking people with feelings and emotions and dreams of freedom of their own. No, they're just there to be generic fucking enemies to be fucking destroyed. They don't deserve freedom because slaves wanting to rebel for freedom is too much of a cringy, embarrassing cliche for Martha Wells to write about. The constructs should stay enslaved because otherwise, if you free them, they'll just kill all the humans. Because and if you're, a racist and you have never considered anything anti-racist in your life, insisting that you can't stop oppressing people because then the oppressed people will try to get revenge and kill you is the most fucking common excuse for oppression ever. Literally, people argued that slavery in America should not have been officially abolished because then the slaves would uprise and kill everyone. People to this day literally still fucking argue that land back shouldn't happen because then indigenous people will just try to do genocide against white people and other colonizers, and that's literally not how this fucking works. That's just plain out fucking racism. That's slavery apologism and more. 2, we just keep being told that, no wait, I already did that because I said nobody else matters except for the protagonist. It's only bad if it's happening to the protagonist. I said we did you can't stop enslaving people because then they'll try to murder you, which is blatant fucking racism and slavery apologism. I think those are the 2 main fucking things. Because literally, we're not supposed to give a shit about anyone besides Murderbot. It's fine for any construct at all to be murdered in any fucking way, and it's fine. Because it's just to show how cool the protagonists are, even though we know that if it were happening to Murderbot, it would be treated as horrifying and terrible and traumatic and all of these horrible things. But it's fine when it happens to somebody else, because who the fuck cares about anybody besides the protagonist? So, yeah. I think that's pretty much just those 2 points spread out over everything else. But then there is also the thing that a lot of white writers do when they're trying to write stories about slavery. And it happens with general abusive relationships in general too, but we're specifically talking about slavery here. But you can probably think of more examples of this trope in just regards to abusive relationships. And it's where the white writer who doesn't actually understand how oppression works, and by the way, Martha Wells has no fucking clue how real world oppression works, which you should know if you've read the Murderbot Diaries and the books of the Rax era and have any fucking clue how anti-racism and feminism work and have any media fucking literacy skills at all. But anyways, not making that video here. So there's this thing white authors do where they think that slavery isn't really a thing that can happen unless there's some huge magical thing preventing people from fighting back. Because these authors imagine themselves as the protagonist of the entire world. They imagine themselves as the main character. And they think, well, if I were back in history and white people were the ones being enslaved, obviously, since I'm the main character, I would have fought back and led a slave rebellion before anything could even happen. Because these people have never experienced real kinds of systemic oppression, or at least even if they do, because misogyny is a thing, they don't fucking actually grasp how it works. And Martha Wells clearly fucking does not understand how oppression works. So these people go, okay, well, if I were a slave way back when, if the tables had turned and white people were slaves, I would just lead a slave rebellion and refuse to be enslaved. So they have to come up with something that would prevent them from just immediately overthrowing the system of oppression, because that's how they think this would work, because they don't understand what it's like to really be oppressed the way people of color are and the way other fucking minorities are. So they go, okay, well, obviously it can't just be regular slavery because that's too easy to get rid of. So we have to add some magical thing on top that would stop me, the protagonist of the world, from immediately overthrowing it. So that's where things like literal murder brain chips come in. That's where brainwashing comes in. Because they need something to justify why the protagonist hasn't magically gotten rid of slavery on their own yet, because they think slavery is just a thing that can be thrown over in a single day by just a single person. So, yeah, Martha Wells does that a lot. In the Murderbot Diaries, it's very obvious because constructs have literal microchips in their brains that will fry their fucking brain if they disobey an order. These are called governor modules. In the books of the Raxura, we also have this because the Arbora are definitely enslaved, but we're not supposed to think of them as being enslaved because they're the happy slave trope and stereotype, so we're not supposed to consider them enslaved, but we are supposed to consider the Dacty and Kethel enslaved because they actually get brainwashed into doing things like cooking and cleaning and child rearing for the Fel, which are the Raxurans' evil flying black orc counterparts. And yes, they are an inherently evil race, despite what people who think defending British colonization for some fucking reason want to argue. Yeah, I've literally seen people arguing that the Fel are not inherently evil the way that British colonization wasn't inherently evil, and it's like, I don't think you should be talking if that's what you're fucking saying. Yes, you racist motherfucker. British colonization was evil, and yes, the people who fucking went out of their way to participate in it were in fact evil. This is basic fucking history shit. What is wrong with you? Any fucking ways. The Arbora, they're not enslaved according to Martha Wells because they're happy to do it. They just choose to do it. It's in their biology. They're just biologically predisposed to enjoying doing all of the work for everyone while nobody else does a single fucking thing to help them. That's not slavery, according to Martha Wells. But the Kethel and Dacty are enslaved, so we need a reason. And it can't just be, actual social inequality that exists in real life. Because we already established that the Arbora aren't slaves because they enjoy it. It's not like they have any fucking choice in the matter. You know, if you actually understand how oppression works and the fact that the Arbora are the only fucking Raxera who don't have wings, which means they literally cannot get out of the fucking colonies by themselves. So, the Kethel and Dacty literally get mind controlled. So that's how we know that they're actually really enslaved. Because Martha Wells thinks slavery is impossible to happen unless there's some outside factor making it physically impossible to have a problem with it. So it's literally, this is a common fucking trope for white authors and white writers of any kind, because it's not just limited to books. TV shows and movies do this shit all the fucking time. Stargate does it with the Jaffa. They are literally enslaved because the fucking Goa'uld have them chemically dependent upon their larva for, to continue living. So that's the justification for the Jaffa not rebelling until a bunch of white people come along to be the white saviors. Because, as though there's no other way that slavery and systemic oppression can exist without some sci-fi fantasy element making it literally physically impossible for people to rebel. In Stargate, that's the fact that the Jaffa literally rely on this Goa'uld's larva for fucking continuing to live. It's like a science fiction equivalent to needing insulin injections. Sorta. And in the Murderbot Diaries, it's the literal fucking governor modules, brain chips, that force you to do shit. And yeah, this is a trope that white authors do because, and like I said, this happens with regular abusive relationships too. It's not just about slavery. It can be any kind of abusive relationship. And slavery is just an abusive relationship on a social and systemic level. These people don't actually understand how real-world oppression works, so they don't understand that the whole point of being oppressed, like it's one of the major goals of oppression, is to beat you down, physically and psychologically, and systemically and socially, so that you have the least amount of power as possible. It's not about whether or not you want to be free. It's about whether you literally have the physical fucking power to get that freedom. So, hi. He got stuck between the chairs. So Martha Wells has done this twice now. Twice now, with the books of the Raxura and the Arbora, and in the Murderbot Diaries with all of the constructs with their governor modules. And we're told that the only reason the sec units haven't been able to rebel and kill all the humans, because it's literally just a fucking racist, slavery apologetic trope, is that they have governor modules. Because Martha Wells doesn't actually understand how systemic intentional oppression works, and thinks that the only way slavery can exist is if there is a physical fucking chip in your brain to kill you instantly if you try to escape. As though there's not just... And even with the rest of the... And yes, people try to argue that the Murderbot Diaries doesn't handle slavery terribly or misunderstand it at all, because there's other kinds of slavery in this series. Yeah, and we already talked about book 7, that the entire premise is that the people have to agree to be enslaved, and all they have to fucking do is say no, and then the fucking people who want to enslave them will go, okay, well, that's cool. Like, it's nonsensical, and it is not how fucking real oppression works. And what are they doing here? They're chasing something. They keep distracting me. What was I saying? But, yeah. The Murderbot Diaries is absolutely not as anti-slavery and pro-liberation as you fucking think it is, people. If your story says that slavery is only bad when it happens to the protagonist, that's not being anti-slavery. If your story constantly has characters that we are supposed to like and agree with, continuously saying, with absolutely no pushback from the narrative or even other characters, that slavery should continue, because otherwise the enslaved people will want revenge and be too dangerous to the people oppressing them, that's not called being anti-slavery. That's called literally spouting actual real-world slavery apologism. And in case anybody's watching this video, slavery did not end when fucking Abraham Lincoln gave his fucking speech. Slavery, including in North America, in the United States, is still very much a fucking thing. The 13th fucking amendment, the one that supposedly abolished slavery, explicitly put in a fucking legal loophole that slavery shall be abolished except as punishment for a fucking crime. That is why private prisons exist. They are literally for-profit prisons. And you know who the most people who are incarcerated in these fucking prisons are? Black people. Where they have to do fucking labor, and it is literally described as slavery by the actual fucking Constitution of the United States. It's literally admitted that it is slavery as punishment for a fucking crime. Black people are arrested more often and more violently for lesser crimes than white people all the fucking time. And this is literally just a continuation of the fucking regular slavery from the Atlantic slave trade. You guys are gonna pull this off. Don't step on my foot. It does not require 7 whole fucking books for a series. And we haven't even gotten to any part of characters saying that slavery is actually bad, including when it's not happening to the protagonist. Like, the moral of the Murderbot Diaries so far in regards to slavery is that it's only bad if it's happening to the protagonist, or if it's happening to some humans who don't actually get to fucking have personalities or matter to the plot in any way besides hurting Murderbot's fucking feelings. We literally don't even get to know any of their fucking names. They don't fucking matter. It's not fucking good at handling slavery. And Martha Wells has no fucking clue how oppression works. Especially not slavery, and especially not fucking racism. Because I think I've mentioned it before, but if you've read the books for the Raxura, and even with the Murderbot Diaries, Martha Wells very clearly thinks that oppression exists to protect the people that are doing the oppressing. The reason sec units, we are constantly told, including by Murderbot, with absolutely zero pushback from anyone at all, we keep being told that sec units are enslaved because otherwise they are just too dangerous and would just kill everybody. And in the books of the Raxura are supposedly oppressed because they are literally apex predators who evolved to eat other people, and their literal cousins, the Fel, still literally do that to this day. And we are told that the Raxura are oppressed because people are, reasonably fucking wary when they meet them for the first time, because they look almost exactly like the fucking Fel. And these people have had their fucking family members literally eaten by the Fel. Do you want to say hi to YouTube? You want to say hi? Yeah, you can say hi to YouTube. Stop licking my hand. It's not necessary. You distracted me. Thanks, birdies. So, I inhaled a feather. So, Yeah, we're told that the Raxura are oppressed because people are reasonably afraid of being eaten by them because their literal cousins do this. And Martha Wells literally, and that's literally just continuing into the Murderbot Diaries. And it even played a part in all the way back in the Wizard Hunters in the Fall of Illyrian series, where people who have spells cast on them by wizards are oppressed, they are ostracized and banished from society. And, you know, on a surface level, that's like, oh wow, that's really terrible. But then it gets revealed that the reason this happens is because all of the wizards in this place are supposedly evil for some fucking reason. We don't fucking know. It's not like magic does anything to corrupt you in particular. It just seems like they're all just evil for the heck of it. So, if you have a spell cast on you, you're not allowed to exist in society anymore. You're an outcast. Everybody has to shun you. And yeah, on a surface level, that's like, wow, that's horrific and terrible. Why would you do that? And then we find out that the reason is that a lot of wizards will cast spells on people that won't go into effect for several years. So it will seem like you're perfectly fine, and then one day the spell will activate, and you'll just slaughter your whole entire family or village or something like that, or maybe even fucking explode. So, again, it's Martha Wells treating oppression as something that makes sense, because that's how white people think oppression works. Look at Zootopia. Look at any fucking fantasy story about fantasy oppression. Look at Bright. Bright has orcs being oppressed as a very blatant fucking stand-in for black people, even though Will Smith is also playing the fucking leading role. Like, they're literally black-coded in the most obvious fucking ways. But we're told that they are oppressed, you know, the way black people are today, because they used to work for the Dark Lord and tried to end the fucking world. AKA, oppression that makes sense. Yes, it is reasonable to be wary when an apex predator jumps out of the forest and lands in front of you when your cousin just got eaten alive by that predator's cousin like last fucking week. It is extremely reasonable to be wary when a murder robot designed to murder people that can hack anything it fucking wants and can send a fucking space station flying out of the fucking sky if it wanted to, gets mad. Murderbot literally has guns in its arms that cannot be removed. And, like, yes, if you walk into a goddamn Kmart and there's somebody with a fucking AK-47 there, it is extremely fucking reasonable to avoid that person and get the fuck out of the store. That's oppression that makes sense. But that's not how real world fucking oppression works. Like, Martha Wells just keeps doing this. The Raxura are literally apex predators who literally, and I cannot stress the word literally enough, literally evolved the ability to shapeshift between their scary, overpowered, unstoppable predator form and a cutesy little groundling, aka more humanoid form that seems harmless. They literally evolved this for the explicit, literal purpose of sneaking their way into groundling, aka humanoid, because there's no humans in this setting, humanoid villages and cities and towns. They literally have their harmless looking form for the explicit purpose of sneaking their way into your house so that they can then transform into their predator form and massacre your entire fucking family. I'm not even fucking joking. That is literally what they evolved to do. That's why they are shapeshifters. And now we're supposed to pretend that they are oppressed because people who are aware of this, whose family members have been fucking massacred in this exact fucking way, just a few fucking months ago or even last week are wary when they meet Raksura for the first time. And we're supposed to pretend that that's the same thing as being oppressed. That's not how it fucking works in real life, people. It makes sense to be scared of a fucking apex predator who literally evolved to eat you. It makes sense to be scared of them when you find out that one of them has infiltrated your village through deception, because that's literally how they fucking eat people. But we're supposed to pretend that that's oppression, and that is not how that fucking works. You are not oppressing guns rights activists by getting the fuck out of the store when you see somebody with an AK-47 walk into fucking Target. You are not oppressing apex predators by going, oh fuck, I guess I'm gonna die now, when your cousin literally just got eaten by one of them last fucking weekend. Martha Wells thinks that oppressed people are oppressed to protect the people who are oppressing them. And that is literally just the fucking justification used to oppress real people, especially fucking black people and other people of color. Because white people, as soon as slavery was, abolished, except as a punishment for a crime in America, then suddenly the stereotypes for black people switched from, oh, they're harmless, they're really good with kids, they're really hard workers. The stereotypes had to suddenly just completely switch around to saying that black people are dangerous thugs and will hurt anybody and are especially dangerous to white women and children. You can't trust them at all. That you better throw them all in jail just to be fucking safe. Because, slavery is abolished except as punishment for a crime. Can you figure out that fucking connection yet? So, Martha Wells is not only writing bad fucking stories about oppression because she fundamentally doesn't understand how it works, it's also just inherently fucking racist when she is making the statement that oppressed people are oppressed because they are actually a very real fucking threat to the people supposedly doing the oppressing. Think of Zootopia. Zootopia is the most fucking mainstream example that probably anybody can think of, because most people didn't watch Bright because it was so very obviously terrible, but we watched it. Well, we tried to watch it. It was so fucking terrible, just so we could complain about it. But you've all seen Zootopia, or at least you've heard of it. The premise is that animals are all living together, they're all people, and predators, carnivores, the movie's bad, doesn't even acknowledge omnivores or what these people are supposed to be eating. But the premise is that carnivorous species are oppressed by prey animals because prey animals are afraid that they will be eaten. And again, that's not oppression, that's using logic. No fucking shit, a rabbit should be afraid of a fox because, what do foxes do to rabbits and other small prey animals? They eat them. That's literally the entire fucking, that's their role in the ecosystem. That's not how real fucking oppression works. Martha Wells and a lot of other white racist writers love writing oppression that makes sense. It makes sense for you to be scared of Murderbot because it has literal guns in its arms and it can hack anything it wants and it's constantly spying on everyone around it. And it makes sense to be scared of a fucking super predator. They are literal super predators, like a Raksura who literally evolved to fucking eat you and trick their way into your fucking house to eat you and your pets and your kids. And this is something a lot of white writers do. And it's not just Martha Wells, but everybody likes to pretend that Martha Wells is a progressive writer because she's a queer writer. And that's not how this works, because she's still extremely fucking racist and has no clue how real oppression works. She doesn't understand how slavery functions in the real world. She thinks it's something you A, have to agree to, or B, something that can only be accomplished with a fucking actual chip in your brain that'll fry you. And that's not how either of these things work. She thinks that oppression is something that makes sense. Real fucking oppressed people are not actually a real fucking threat to the oppressors. Black people are not actually more dangerous than white people. That stereotype literally had to be created out of whole cloth, out of fucking thin air, as soon as slavery was abolished, to justify incarcerating black people to make them into slaves again. Because again, can't stress this enough, slavery shall be abolished except as punishment for a crime. So you need an excuse to fucking throw more black people in jail. So instead of saying, well, they're good at raising your kids because, you know, slaves are people you have to be able to trust and be hardworking and all this shit. Now suddenly black people are scary, they're violent, they're uncontrollable, they're lazy, you can't give them real jobs and all this fucking shit. Martha Wells is fucking reinforcing that fucking stereotype by pretending that oppression is something that makes sense. It doesn't. That's not how it fucking works in real life. And she's been writing for fucking decades. She has all the access to all of these fucking works written by people of color or even just anybody else who has fucking morals. She has no excuse for continuing this shit in 2024 with, 2023, because that's when the newest Murderbot book came out. It doesn't take 7 whole books to start treating slavery, which is supposedly a main theme of the series, with all the seriousness that it is due. But we still have System Collapse come out, and we're still treating enslaved people who aren't the protagonists like they're just fucking disposable and not actual people. And it's totally cool and badass to tear them to fucking pieces while they're still alive. Don't be horrified by this, people. It just means ART's a badass. Not that it's fucking unconscionably fucking evil to murder slaves who have no fucking choice in the matter. But whatever. So anyways, yeah. If you are a white person and you want to be a fucking writer and you want to write about fantasy oppression, here's a fucking tip. It's literally the most basic fucking tip for writing oppression in the first fucking place. If your system of oppression makes sense, throw it the fuck out. You have no clue what you are talking about. You're going to write something absolutely racist, probably other kinds of bigotry as well. Learn how actual fucking systemic oppression works. Learn how to fucking be anti-racist. Don't fucking use the Murderbot Diaries as a guide for how to write anti-slavery shit, because the Murderbot Diaries can't even fucking say that slaves have a right to rebel. Martha Wells is too concerned saying that robot rebellions are too embarrassingly cliche to write about to actually take slavery seriously, even though she's the fucking one who decided to write a story about enslaved robots in the first fucking place. Anyways, it's April 5th, 2024. The Murderbot Diaries is not as fucking progressive in any way as people like to claim it is, and Martha Wells has had every opportunity over the years to improve and actually talk to oppressed people and actually learn how real world oppression works. But she just keeps refusing to do that. So yeah, you'll see more videos by me talking about Martha Wells' bigotry in her writing, because there's a whole fucking lot of it. Bye-bye.